The white colonial house on Maple Street looked exactly as I remembered it. The shutters were freshly painted, the lawn manicured to perfection, and there was a brand new Lexus SUV parked in the driveway. After 9 years working as a chief engineer on cargo ships crossing the Pacific, I'd finally saved enough to retire early. I was coming home to surprise my wife, Barbara, and spend whatever time we had left together properly. I was 68 years old, and I'd missed too much already. I stood on the front porch, my duffel bag at my feet, and rang the doorbell. Through the frosted glass, I could see movement, and then the door swung open. My daughter-in-law, Melissa, stood there, her face cycling through shock, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite read before settling on a forced smile. "Richard! Oh my God, we weren't expecting you for another month." She glanced over her shoulder nervously. "David's at work, and I wasn't prepared for visitors." "I'm not a visitor, Melissa. I'm coming home. Where's Barbara?" "She's resting. You know how she is these days." Melissa stepped back reluctantly, letting me in. "The Alzheimer's has been really hard on her. Maybe you should wait until David gets home before you see her? She gets confused easily, and a surprise might upset her." But I was already past her, my sea bag forgotten in the doorway. The house looked immaculate. New furniture in the living room, a massive flat-screen TV that must have cost thousands, and I could see stainless steel appliances gleaming in the kitchen. I'd been sending home $4,000 every month for Barbara's care, on top of the $2,000 from her late mother's trust fund. Apparently, some of that money had gone toward renovations. "Barbara?" I called out, heading toward the bedroom we'd shared for 43 years. "She's not in there anymore," Melissa said quickly. "We had to move her. She needed... It's better this way." Something cold settled in my stomach. "Move her where?" "The basement. We converted it into a bedroom for her. It's quieter down there, and she can't wander as easily." I took the basement stairs 2 at a time, my heart pounding. The stairwell was dark, and when I reached the bottom and pulled the chain on the overhead bulb, what I saw made my blood run cold. The bedroom was the unfinished corner of our basement, separated from the rest of the space by a hanging sheet. There was a twin mattress on the floor, with a thin blanket, a plastic chair, and a bedpan. The concrete floor was cold and damp, and sitting on that mattress, staring at nothing, was my wife. Barbara had always been a vibrant woman, even as the Alzheimer's began to take hold. But the person I saw now looked like a ghost. She'd lost at least 30 pounds. Her gray hair was matted and unwashed, and she was wearing what looked like an adult diaper and an old nightgown that I didn't recognize. There were bruises on her arms, yellow and fading, like they'd been there a while. "Barbara?" My voice came out as a whisper. She turned her head slowly, and for a moment, her eyes were completely blank. Then something flickered, a recognition that came and went like a candle in the wind. "Harold?" Harold was her father's name. He'd been dead for 30 years. I knelt beside her, taking her thin hand in mine. It was ice cold. "It's me, sweetheart. It's Richard. I'm home now." "Richard?" She seemed to focus for a moment, and then tears began rolling down her cheeks. "You came back. I thought you forgot about me." Behind me, I heard Melissa descending the stairs. "See? I told you it would upset her. She has episodes like this all the time." I didn't turn around. I couldn't. If I looked at Melissa right then, I might have done something I'd regret. Instead, I kept my voice level and asked, "How long has she been living down here?" "About 2 years. After her last fall, we thought it was safer. She kept trying to go outside, and you know how she gets." 2 years. I'd been video calling every week for 2 years, and Melissa had always made sure Barbara was upstairs, dressed nicely, with good lighting. She'd always said, "Mom's having a good day today." And Barbara would wave at the camera, not really present but not looking like this. How much of what I'd seen had been staged? When did she last see a doctor? We've been managing her care at home. It's expensive, you know, taking her to appointments all the time. I stood up slowly, and when I turned to face Melissa, I must have looked dangerous because she took a step back. "I've been sending you $6,000 a month for the past 9 years. That's over $500,000. Where did it go?" "We've had expenses. The house needed repairs. David's truck payment, my car lease, and Barbara's medications are expensive. Barbara doesn't need a Lexus. She needs a clean bed, regular meals, and medical care. I climbed the stairs, and Melissa scrambled out of my way. I want to see the financial records, all of them, every bank statement, every receipt, every bill. And I want them now. You can't just come in here and start making demands. We've been taking care of her while you were off gallivanting around the ocean. I turned on her, and whatever she saw in my face made her stop talking. I was working. I was providing for my wife's care. And while I was gone, you put her in a basement like a dog, and apparently spent her money on luxury cars. Get my son on the phone. Right now? Melissa pulled out her cell phone with shaking hands. When David answered, she said, "Your father's here. He's upset about Mom's living situation." A pause. "No, he just showed up." "I don't know, yes. He wants to talk to you." She held out the phone, and I took it. David. "Dad! Hey, it's great that you're home early. Listen, I know the basement setup looks bad, but we had to do something. Mom kept falling, and we couldn't watch her 24/7. Stop talking." My voice was quiet, but he shut up immediately. "I'll deal with you when you get home. Right now, I need you to know that things are about to change. Drastically." I hung up and turned back to Melissa. "I'm taking Barbara to the hospital. Now, you're going to help me get her ready, and then you're going to give me access to every financial account, or I'm calling the police and filing an elder abuse report before we even leave this driveway." For the next hour, I focused on Barbara. I helped her upstairs, ran a warm bath while Melissa gathered clean clothes, and gently washed my wife's hair for the first time in God knows how long. She cried through most of it, sometimes calling me Richard, sometimes calling me by her father's name, sometimes just crying without words. Every bruise I found, every bedsore, every sign of neglect, I documented with my phone's camera. At the hospital, the ER doctor was a young woman named Dr. Patricia Chen. She took one look at Barbara, and her expression went from professional concern to barely concealed anger. "How long has she been malnourished?" "I don't know. I just found her like this today. I've been working overseas for the past 9 years. "And who's been caring for her?" "My son and his wife. They told me they were managing her Alzheimer's at home." Dr. Chen pulled me aside. "Mr. Miller, I have to tell you, this is one of the worst cases of elder neglect I've seen in a while. Your wife is severely dehydrated, malnourished, and those bruises suggest she's been falling frequently without proper medical attention. There are also signs of a urinary tract infection that's probably been untreated for weeks. I'm going to have to file a report with Adult Protective Services." "Do it," I said, "and I want everything documented. Every injury, every sign of neglect. I'm going to need it." While Barbara was being admitted, I sat in the waiting room and made phone calls. The first was to Frank Morrison, a lawyer I'd sailed with years ago who'd since retired and set up practice in Portland. The second was to Marcus Webb, a private investigator Frank recommended. By the time David arrived at the hospital, looking anxious and defensive, I had an appointment with Frank for the next morning, and Marcus was already pulling financial records. "Dad, I can explain." "Don't." I stood up, and my son, who was 42 years old and had always been bigger than me, took an involuntary step back. "Your mother is being admitted. The doctors say she's malnourished, dehydrated, and has an untreated infection. They've filed an elder abuse report. You and Melissa are going to the house right now. You're going to pack up all of Barbara's things, everything, and you're going to move them into the master bedroom. She will never, ever spend another night in that basement. Am I clear? You don't understand what it's been like." "I don't want to hear it. Not right now. Right now, I want you to fix what you can fix. We'll talk about the rest later." After he left, I sat with Barbara. They'd given her fluids, cleaned her up properly, and she was sleeping in a real bed with clean sheets. Watching her sleep, I felt something crack open inside my chest. For 9 years, I'd been sending money home, calling every week, trusting that my son and his wife were taking care of the woman I'd built a life with. I'd been so focused on providing financially, on building that retirement nest egg, that I'd never thought to question what was really happening at home. My father had been a merchant marine too. He'd missed my childhood, coming home every few months with presents and stories, but never really being there for the daily grind of raising kids. I'd sworn I'd be different, but when Barbara's Alzheimer's diagnosis came 9 years ago, I'd convinced myself that staying at sea was the right choice. The money was too good to pass up, and with David and Melissa there, Barbara wouldn't be alone. I'd told myself I was being responsible, being a provider. What I'd really been was a coward. I'd run away from watching my wife's mind slowly disappear, and I'd paid David and Melissa to do the hard work I couldn't face. And they'd taken that money and used it for themselves, while my wife lived in a basement. The next morning, I met with Frank Morrison. He was 70 now, his hair completely white, but his mind was still sharp. He listened to everything, took notes, and then sat back in his chair. "Richard, I'm going to be straight with you. You've got a solid case for elder abuse and financial exploitation. The photos, the medical records, the fact that they were receiving $6,000 a month, plus her trust fund money, it's damning. But you need to be prepared for this to get ugly. David's your son. I know. He's going to argue that Barbara's care was expensive, that they did their best, that you weren't there to see how hard it was. Melissa, especially, she'll paint herself as the overwhelmed caregiver who did what she had to do. Can you prove otherwise? That's where your PI comes in. We need bank statements, credit card records, receipts. We need to show where the money actually went. We also need witness testimony, neighbors, anyone who might have seen how Barbara was being treated. Marcus Webb was good at his job. Within a week, he had a financial picture that made my stomach turn. Of the $648,000 I'd sent home over 9 years, plus the $180,000 from Barbara's trust fund, less than $50,000 had gone toward anything that could reasonably be called her care. The rest had gone to home renovations, car payments, a timeshare in Maui, expensive dinners, and regular shopping sprees. Melissa had a closet full of designer handbags that together cost more than a year of Barbara's medications. Marcus also found the neighbors. The Hendersons next door had seen Barbara in the backyard once, wearing only a nightgown in winter, clearly confused. They'd called David, concerned, and he told them everything was under control. Mrs. Chen across the street had offered to help with Barbara's care multiple times, even volunteering to sit with her so David and Melissa could have date nights. But Melissa had always refused, saying they had it handled. But the most damaging evidence came from somewhere I hadn't expected. David and Melissa had a cleaning service come twice a month. One of the cleaners, a woman named Rosa Martinez, had kept notes on her phone about what she'd seen. She'd documented the basement room, Barbara's condition on various dates, and most damningly, she'd recorded a conversation where Melissa complained to another cleaner about how expensive the old lady is, and how they were just waiting for her to die so they could stop pretending to care. Rosa had been planning to report it herself, but she was undocumented and afraid of getting involved with authorities. When Marcus approached her through a community organization and promised to help her with her immigration status, she agreed to testify. I had to face the hard questions too. Frank didn't pull any punches during our prep sessions. Why didn't you come home more often? Why didn't you video call more? Why didn't you demand to see financial records? The truth was complicated and uncomfortable. I'd been avoiding watching my wife forget who I was. I'd told myself that the money was enough, that David was a good son who'd take care of his mother, that my presence might even make things harder for Barbara. I'd let my fear and my grief override my judgment, and I'd trusted the wrong people with the most important person in my life. 3 months after I'd found Barbara in that basement, we sat in a courtroom. I'd moved Barbara to a memory care facility that cost $8,000 a month, every penny of my pension. But she had her own room with a window, 3 hot meals a day, and a staff trained in Alzheimer's care. She was gaining weight, the bruises had healed, and while the Alzheimer's was still there, she had moments of clarity now. Sometimes she knew who I was. David and Melissa sat across the aisle with their own lawyer. They'd tried to avoid this, tried to settle out of court, but I'd refused. This wasn't just about the money. It was about accountability. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. The financial records showing misappropriation of funds, the medical records documenting neglect, Rosa's testimony about the conditions she'd witnessed, photos of the basement bedroom. The Hendersons' testimony about Barbara in the yard. Dr. Chen's professional opinion that the level of neglect bordered on criminal. Melissa's lawyer tried to argue that caring for an Alzheimer's patient was overwhelming, that they'd done their best with limited resources, that they'd never intended any harm. He pointed out that I'd been absent for 9 years, that I'd trusted them with her care, that they'd shouldered an enormous burden. And he wasn't entirely wrong. But the bank records didn't lie. The Lexus wasn't a medical necessity. The Maui timeshare wasn't medication. The designer handbags weren't care supplies. When it was my turn to testify, the defense attorney went after me hard. "Mr. Miller, isn't it true that you spent 9 years at sea while your wife's condition deteriorated?" "Yes." "And you didn't come home once during that time?" "I came home twice briefly, for a few days each time." "I should have come more often." "You trusted your son to care for his mother?" "I did. I was wrong. You sent money every month. Did you ever ask for an accounting of how it was spent?" "No. I trusted them. That was my mistake." "So you abdicated your responsibility as a husband and father, left your son to handle everything, and now you're blaming him for not living up to your expectations?" "I'm blaming him for stealing from his mother and leaving her to live in a basement while he drove a new truck and his wife carried $1,000 purses." There's a difference between struggling to provide care and choosing to neglect someone while spending their money on luxuries. The verdict took 2 days. David was found guilty of financial exploitation of an elderly person and reckless endangerment. Melissa was found guilty of elder abuse, criminal neglect, and financial exploitation. David got 2 years in prison, plus restitution of $580,000. Melissa got 4 years, plus the same restitution. As they were led away, David looked back at me. He didn't look angry or defiant. He looked small and scared and lost. And for a moment, I saw the little boy who used to wait for me at the dock when I'd come home from sea, running into my arms like I was a hero. That little boy had grown into a man I didn't recognize, and I had to accept my part in that. It's been 6 months since the trial. Barbara is stable now, as stable as someone with advanced Alzheimer's can be. I visit her every single day. Sometimes she knows me, calls me Richard, and asks about our garden at home. Sometimes she calls me Harold, or forgets I've been there 5 minutes after I leave. But I'm there, every day. No more excuses. David writes to me from prison. I haven't written back yet. I don't know if I will. My anger has faded into something more complicated. Grief, maybe, or regret. Grief for the son I thought I had. Regret for all the ways I failed, both of them, by not being present when it mattered. Melissa's parents called me once, crying, begging me to drop the charges, to show mercy. I told them the same thing I told the judge. Mercy would have been checking on Barbara, calling for help when things got hard, asking for more support. What they did wasn't a mistake or an oversight. It was a choice, made over and over again, every single day for years. The financial restitution is being paid in installments. They had to sell the house, the cars, everything. The money goes into a trust for Barbara's care. When she's gone, whatever is left will go to the Alzheimer's Association. Not to David. Never to David. People ask me if I regret coming home, if I wish I'd just stayed at sea where I didn't have to see what had become of my wife, my son, my family. The answer is complicated. I regret that I waited so long. I regret that I let fear and avoidance guide my choices. I regret that I wasn't there to protect Barbara when she needed me most. But I don't regret coming home. I don't regret fighting for her, even though it meant destroying what was left of my relationship with my son. Because at the end of the day, I made a promise to Barbara 43 years ago, in sickness and in health, for better or worse. And for 9 years, I broke that promise by convincing myself that money was enough, that trust was the same as oversight, that being a provider meant I didn't also have to be present. I learned the hard way that you can't outsource love. You can't delegate responsibility for the people who matter most, and you can't make up for absence, no matter how good your intentions or how valid your reasons. Last week, I sat with Barbara in the memory care garden. It was one of her good days. She knew who I was, remembered fragments of our early years together, even laughed at an old joke I told. When it was time for me to leave, she grabbed my hand and held it tight. "You're here," she said, and her eyes were clear and present. "You didn't leave me. I'm here," I told her, and I meant it. "I'm not going anywhere, ever again." She smiled, and for just a moment, I saw the woman I'd married, the woman I'd built a life with, the woman I should have fought for sooner. And I promised myself, and her, that for whatever time we had left, I would keep showing up. Not because the court said so, not because anyone was watching, but because that's what love actually means. Being there. Every single day. No matter how hard it gets. That's the lesson I want to share with anyone listening to this story. Don't wait until it's almost too late to realize that the people you love need more than your money or your good intentions. They need you. Your presence. Your attention. Your daily choice to show up. Even when it's hard. Even when it's heartbreaking. Even when it means facing the parts of life you'd rather avoid. And if you've trusted someone else to care for your elderly parents, your disabled family members, anyone vulnerable, verify. Don't just assume. Don't just accept video calls and cheerful reports. Ask hard questions. Demand documentation. Show up unexpectedly. Because the people who depend on you deserve to know that someone is actually watching out for them. I failed Barbara for 9 years. I can't get those years back. But I can make sure that every day from now until the end, she knows she matters more than any job, any amount of money, any excuse I could come up with for not being there. That's all any of us can do. Recognize when we've been wrong, face the consequences of our choices, and commit to doing better with whatever time we have left.